So if you somehow or other are watching us right now, we're just waiting for the YouTube connection to connect, which I think it may just have done. Is that fair comment, Will?
We're just going live. If you just bear me with one moment, and we'll double check we're streaming, but it looks like we're going to be live in a second. Yeah.
You just confirm to me when you're ready.
Okay, I think we're streaming now, Chairman.
Are you happy? Yep. Okay. Very good. So we are now live on YouTube. For those of you who are watching us, you're extremely welcome. It's very, very good to know that you're sufficiently interested in local affairs to take the trouble to watch us this evening. And we hope you will feel that we have a good debate. So just to reopen the meeting, this is a meeting of the East Arts District Council Development Management Committee taking place on Wednesday, the 15th of July, 2020. I'm just now going to turn to the agenda. I'm just going to start with item 1 of the agenda, which is apologies. I'm looking to Peter Mannings to notify us of apologies and substitutions.
Yes, Chairman. Okay, I've got an apology from Councillor Andrew Huggins, and Councillor Rishi Fernand was online here as his substitute. And then secondly, apology from Councillor Peter Ruffles, and I believe we have Councillor Kay here as his substitute. And I can see them both, it's fine.
Thank you very much. For the benefit of the viewing public, I just want to make clear that what you have on the screen essentially is 2 categories of people. There are councillors, and the other category are officers. We also have all the councillors on the screen that you can see, with one exception, are members of this committee and therefore will vote and have a vote. The one exception to that is Councillor Jan Goody, who is the executive portfolio holder responsible for this area. She is not a member of the committee and doesn't have a vote, but is present as an observer. I'm just going to, so that the viewing public is very clear, I'm just going to ask the officers, please, to just announce themselves. And I'm going to take this in a fairly random order. It's just the sequence in which their pictures appear on my particular screen. So if I could just ask Officer Ailish Edmonds to just put a hand up to identify herself, please. Thank you. Officer Peter Mannings. Thank you. Officer David Snell. Thank you. Officer Sarah Saunders. Sarah is the head of planning. Thank you very much, Sarah. Officer Victoria Wilders, who's our legal advisor. Thank you, Victoria. And we have Will in Democratic Services. Well done, thank you. And then last but not least, and you're only last because you're the last photograph on my screen, Officer Stephen Tapper. Thank you. So for the benefit of the public, none of those individuals will be voting this evening, but they're all here to advise the committee on the subject matter of this evening's meeting. And since I've mentioned you, Councillor Goody, if you could just give us a wave just to demonstrate to the public you are not a voting member of the committee. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 2 of the agenda, which is Chairman's announcements. Just one announcement, again, very much for the benefit of the viewing public. Obviously, this meeting is being conducted virtually. Before lockdown, this meeting would have been conducted in the conventional manner at the council offices. And there is legislation that authorises us to conduct this meeting on a virtual basis. And I'd just like to read this note to you so that you're aware. The local authorities and police and crime panels, coronavirus, flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings, England and Wales Regulations 2020, came into force on Saturday, 4th April 2020, to enable councils to hold remote committee meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic period. This is to ensure local authorities can conduct business during this current public health emergency. This meeting of the Development Management Committee will be held remotely under these regulations via the Zoom application and is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube. Thank you very much. My only other chairman's announcement is that we have some late representations, which I believe all members should have received during the course of today. I don't need to make reference to those now, but you should all have those with you. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the minutes. Our previous meeting was on the 17th of June. The minutes appear at page 19 of the pack. I need a proposer and a seconder, or of course, if anyone has any comments, they should let me know. So I'm taking Councillor Beckett as a proposer.
Happy to second that.
And Councillor Jones as a seconder. You just got pipped to the post there, Councillor Buckmaster, but you can try again later.
Chairman, just as a matter, you've missed out item 3, declaration.
I'll come. Thank you very much, Councillor. I'll come back to item 3. So let's just finish item 4 and we'll come back to item 3. I'm sorry. Thank you. All those are happy with the minutes, please show a hand. And if you just hold your hands on the screen for long enough so that officers can just count them, please.
Yeah, I think that's all hands are up, I think.
Happy?
Yeah. So
I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone.
Just need to go back and do
yes, Councillor Jones quite rightly says, do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to declare, I have a non-pecuniary interest in items 5B and 5C, as the applicant is on both of these is Hertfordshire County Council, and I'm an elected member of that council. But it's a non-pecuniary interest.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. I will declare exactly the same interest, non-pecuniary interest.
Okay.
Councillor Kay's put his hand up. I think that's the same one, isn't it, Councillor Kay? Yeah.
Okay. Any others?
No, I can't see any other hands.
Okay, fine.
No, thank you very much indeed. That brings us on to item 5, which is the planning applications that we're considering this evening. The first of these is at page 19 of the pack, and is application 3192626 FUL. And this is an application in relation to a proposed mixed-use Western neighbourhood local centre comprising a doctor's surgery, Class D1, children's nursery, Class D1, 78-bed care home, Class C2, 29 affordable apartments, Class C3, and flexible commercial floor space within Class A1, A2, A3, A4, D1, D2. The proposal includes the provision of a substation, car parking, access, landscaping, and other associated works. And the location of this in relation to this application is land at Stortford Fields, Bishop Stortford North, Bishop Stortford. The case officer for this application is Stephen Tapper, and I'm going to ask Stephen to present this item now, please. Stephen. Should just say, Stephen, you're muted. You're not. Well done.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, perfectly well. Yeah, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Chairman. It actually gives me some pleasure to be able to talk to this application this evening, because there's a centre which has been quite a long time coming, and we were quite worried from time to time as to how this centre would realise itself, given the vagaries of the commercial property market. But there's an overriding need for these kinds of centres in large developments such as Bishop Stortford North. And this is the first of 2. The second centre hopefully will also be realised in the eastern neighbourhood, That'll be a slightly bigger one with a number of other employment opportunities, as well as providing local services for people. So I'm sure you've read the report, which is quite lengthy, and you'll have seen that I've had a few key issues to discuss within that report. And for the moment, I intend only really focusing on those by way of this presentation, and then we can pick up at other issues through questions. So if you have the report in front of you, I'm going to look first of all at the summary of the main issues, which we identified as making sure that the development was policy compliant in terms of the land uses themselves, the variety of land uses proposed, but also that it would create a very vibrant and local centre which would provide all the relevant services that we need. We then have issues about what I loosely call urban design, the appearance of the development, the layout, its connectivity to other parts of the Stortford Fields development and beyond into Bishop Stortford. There are some issues around neighbour amenity with these kinds of commercial developments. We must make sure that they're not going to cause too much disturbance. And there are issues around sustainable transport and climate change. So those are the key things. If we could just go on to the site plan, please, and we'll just look at the context of the site. It is situated there opposite the primary school. Can I take control of the screen, by the way, just to point to things? Have I got that?
I'm not sure that'll be possible, but if you just prompt me if you'd like to move along.
Oh, right, you can't give me the control. Okay. The school is just to the north of the red site, red line site. And they were always regarded, these two developments, the school and the neighbourhood centre, as being in a sense one in terms of creating a heart to the community. This in particular, the western neighbourhood of Bishop Stortford North. Unfortunately, the school development is delayed, as in fact is the opening of all the schools. Priority was ultimately given to the new primary school on Farnham Road, which is way out to the east. And it's probable that this school site will remain vacant for some time until that takes its turn to be developed. Having said that, the development of this commercial centre would also take some time, so hopefully there will be a not too much delay between the two. You can see that it's surrounded by a fairly dense urban area, but there's also good access to greenways and play facilities and sports facilities in due course, which will benefit in particular the occupiers of the apartments. At the back of the site, there's actually on that southern boundary a very dense hedge and trees which screen out the water tower and other utilities at the back. So it's actually fairly well contained by that, and the other three boundaries will in due course be developed and include some landscaping alongside the buildings. Can we look at the next slide, please? So I've included this. It is an extract from an indicative layout that was in the original 2013 design code document. Because in 2013 we realized that the development of this commercial centre would be some years away, and we didn't realize at the time just how many years away it would be. It was decided to draw up a design code to set, if you like, a base standard for the layout and the kind of attributes that this development should have if it was to perform well as a neighbourhood centre. And it was decided that there should be, as you would expect, a square, a plaza, which would be an attractive place for people to gather. And that's numbered 3 on this particular drawing. And then there would be an array of buildings behind that. And they themselves would then hide the car parking, so that the externally, the appearance of the development would be attractive. It would be active with people and shops and so on. The design code also includes long lists of attributes that must be met in terms of the way the centre is connected to other places, the quality of architecture, quite a lot. There's probably a couple of pages of things that need to be addressed. It's actually, in a sense, although we've probably changed to some extent what we expect from a centre, but between the 2 centres themselves, east and west, nevertheless, this design code has proved to be of value to the applicants in drawing up their current scheme. And I recently had a look through again the design code, and I felt that much of what it was saying has been realized in the current application. If we now go straight to the next slide, which is the current proposal, we've still got the car parking well hidden away behind the buildings, plenty of landscaping, but a slightly different configuration, largely because there's a care home as part of the proposal. And that care home takes up quite a lot of the footprint of the site overall, which I've mentioned in the report. It does make it slightly more difficult to achieve, in particular, the public square that we were expecting to see. It is there in front of the care home to the north of it, but it's not quite as easy to create as it was previously. The care home has been tested in various different locations within the site. The design and access statement includes a lot of options in terms of how the site could be laid out, but this was the only one in which things worked well, in the sense that the needs of all of the different operators here were met, but it also gave scope for an attractive frontage and that public space. You'll see that there's a turning head, which unfortunately takes a bite out of the plaza, and I refer to that in the report. It's something that we would like to address, because our understanding is that the turning head is required for the local bus, the 311. Excuse me. In due course, we expect the bus to run past this site and into the eastern neighbourhood, and the turning head should not be required. So there's discussion to be had there with the current owners of the streets, the consortium, and the county council, who will adopt it in due course. There's also a substation which takes a bite out of the plaza. However, it's not just about the space, it's about how it's used. And in this case, we do have retail units which will face onto that plaza, and I would fully expect to see a cafe in that location. There'll be plenty of footfall, because the other major benefit of this development is that there's a surgery proposed for South Street, which I think is a great achievement. The timing of that has proved to be very, very satisfactory. We have a requirement on the consortium, Bishop Stortford North Consortium, that they market both this neighbourhood centre and the eastern one, and include the reference to the acceptability of primary care centres. The idea being that if we failed to realise it here, it might be realised in the eastern neighbourhood. Fortunately, the NHS and South Street Surgery have come good with this, and it will now be a really important feature of this development. It will not only serve the community well, but it will bring footfall and activity, and that all helps to support then retail units, which are, again, a main feature of this development. So you recall that buildings 2 and 3 are 3 and 4 story. The darker shaded element is 4 story. And we had that moved to a position more towards the center of the site, so it wouldn't dominate at all the 2-story dwellings on Rainb Road. And it actually, I think, works quite well visually because it's in the middle of the development. So that comprises a variety of, or potential variety of shops and services at ground floor level. It has to be flexible at this stage because the developer needs to go to the market and test the interest in a number of different areas, although clearly it would be very attractive if there was a local corner shop, a small supermarket, as well as cafes and bars or other uses, hairdressers and so on. Could be a variety of things, but all of them would provide a local service and bring some activity to the area. And above them, 29 affordable apartments, an entirely affordable development, which is very welcome. And then the last element is the nursery on that far eastern side of the site, with its own, as you would expect, more self-contained site. And that will again provide a very local and valuable service to this very large development. Ultimately, we're looking at something like 2,200 homes across Stortford Fields, plus development at St Michael's Hurst. So note also the landscaping. Note that landscaping breaks up the car park. Note that there are good walkways through the car park. And in the bottom left-hand corner, the far western end, there is a footpath connection to the Wickham Hall bridleway. So connection is very good. And as I mentioned before, there's good access to other facilities and open spaces within Stortford Fields. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So here's just a few of the CGIs. I'll go through them quickly. You've probably seen them before. This is looking west on Rainb Road. So you have in front of you there, in the middle of the slide, you've got the retail units with the apartments above, and in the darker grey, the 4th floor element, which is more towards the centre of the site. On the far left is the day nursery, slightly different architecture, perhaps creating a bridge architecturally with the residential within the local area on that street. And then in the distance, you can see the care home. Next one. And this is looking back at the daycare centre. Pleasant architecture, I think, and the retail and the apartments on the right. Next one. This is looking towards the care home with the surgery on the left of that and the first of the shops. And again, the apartments going up to four floors. And you can see at the center of the screen that turning head, which is eating into the public plaza. But it's beginning to indicate the kind of landscaping, quality of landscaping, and in particular the surfacing that we'll be expecting to come forward. Also, I think it's interesting that there's some nice subtle changes in the materials that have been chosen. Windows, balconies, and so on are nicely outlined in different kinds of materials to add variety. Next one. And this is a view from the back. We wanted to make sure that it was an interesting view, not just a sort of solid curtain wall with no architectural features. On the right-hand side, we had the terraces that some of the apartments enjoy, moved from the north side to the south side partly so that they weren't overlooking or creating noise and nuisance for people living on Rainbow Road, but also on the south side, clearly they will catch the sun and it'll be a more pleasant terrace for all that. Tree planting, as I said before, through the car park, and I think quite a pleasant look to the whole development. I think that's probably the last of the slides there. Thank you. So I don't know how we are for time, Chairman, but if I can just quickly go through the key issues. Got to find my report now. So I'll go on to, I think we'll skip over the consultea responses and go straight to section 8, which is where we start to discuss the various issues. So the first one I mentioned, this is paragraph 8.1, is the very principle of the mixed use local centre and making sure that the various different elements are policy compliant. So I've referred to the district plans policies and district plan expectations of what these centres should be. And it says in Bish 1, 2 mixed-use local centres at Bishop Stortford North, providing so much commercial space, variety of uses, and yeah, generally ensuring that between them they will serve the community well. And it's about a neighbourhood centre providing a range of local shops and services. I mentioned earlier 8.3, the design code, and the importance of that, which was included then the primary school as part of the consideration. And there's reference to cafes, restaurants, employment, and all sorts of things. So in my view, the current application is providing a large amount of that variety of uses that we were looking for. And just to emphasize that we haven't lost altogether the idea of employment space, but we think it's going to be much more effective if that is concentrated in the Eastern Neighbourhood Centre, where there'll be more space to set them out and businesses can actually probably work together and have connections which will be valuable. So I then go through each of the land uses: doctor's surgery, nursery, flexible commercial units, and so on, and show that they all have a sound policy background. And then the apartments, 29 affordable apartments are proposed. And I think that's very welcome. It will bring surveillance to the centre, more footfall, and as well as providing obviously very valuable housing, which was not accounted for in the 2,200 dwellings that were referred to in the original planning permission. As a technicality, that original planning permission fell away as far as this site's concerned, because reserve matters were not submitted in time to keep it alive. So we are looking here at a fresh application for the neighbourhood centre. And however you look at it, those 29 units are in addition to the 2,200, therefore. I do say a little bit about the policy requirements in terms of housing mix, and in particular focus on the tenure split between within the affordable housing. And I refer to the fact that policy and the SMAR would normally expect to see the affordable housing split 84% affordable rented and 16% shared ownership. In this case, we've got different circumstances in the sense that this is all affordable. Now, the policy still says that for any housing development, there should be compliance with the SMAR, the Strategic Market Housing Assessment, which is where we get our understanding of these current needs in terms of the mix. As it happens, if we were to apply the 86-24 ratio, it would require 10 of the units to be affordable rented. The applicants are actually proposing that 24% of the 29 apartments are rented, which is just 7 units, but that's only 3 short. And both housing services and ourselves as planners are content with that. We think that that's very reasonable in circumstances where the whole development is affordable and we're benefiting from all of those additional units. So although I probably mistakenly in the report said that it wasn't policy compliant, it isn't in terms of the 86-14 split, but it is compliant in terms of the overall housing, affordable housing that's being brought forward. It's an acceptable mix. Moving on, I then spend a bit of time looking at the care home in the report, which I'm on paragraph 8.20, because there was no expectation originally back in 2013 that there would be a care home within this development. And I have referred to the fact already that it has quite a substantial footprint. However, we do know that there's a considerable need for accommodation for the elderly. The elderly population is increasing all the time, and the need that we have now will only become greater in the future. And the applicants have pointed out that in Bishop Stortford itself, there is a considerable shortfall within the catchment area. The consequence of that is that I think we can look at this on its merits as a use that wasn't anticipated, but which will nevertheless bring considerable benefit to the community. There will be 170 or so people employed in the care home. It will sit next to a primary care centre, and although it does take a little more footprint than we might have wished, I think that you'll hopefully agree that the balance of the development that the developers intend bringing forward is so beneficial that the care home can be accepted as part of that mix. You may say, well, are we going to get the retail? Are we going to get the surgery and so on? Or do we just get a care home? I don't think that applies. I know that the NHS and South Street surgery are very well advanced in terms of this particular site. I believe the funding is well on its way, and that's confirmed also by the applicants. In terms of the shops and other services that would occupy the commercial premises at ground floor, they of course are on the ground floor underneath the apartments, and the apartments are like the care home, key to the viability of the development. So if you get the apartments, you get the space for the shops in addition. And I'm also assured that the day nursery is something which is, if not fully signed up, it's well on the way. So I think that taken as a whole, the care home can be seen to be a valuable part of this development. The next key issue was the quality of design and visual appearance. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this now, Mr. Chairman, because I think it's fairly easy to understand All I would say is that we have spent a long time discussing this with the applicants, helping them to refine the urban design attributes of this scheme, some of which I've referred to earlier when looking at the slides. And I think that the outcome is currently an attractive, albeit contemporary scheme. And the contemporary scheme was not ruled out by the original design principles. It simply said that if it's going to be a contemporary design, it needs to, as it were, hang together across the whole site. And I think that is certainly the case with the development before you. Moving on to neighbour amenity, we're always concerned that the neighbours shouldn't be disturbed by this kind of use, and all of the, I think pretty much all of the houses on Rainbow Road are occupied now. So people will obviously living there have a view to this. They will want to know that in particular the uses on the ground floors are going to be controlled in terms of opening hours. We're proposing conditions in that respect, that if there are takeaways and other food premises, that there will be proper control of odours and noise and so on, and that we will monitor these things over a course of time. The outdoor play area is a potential source of noise at the children's daycare centre, the nursery, and a noise barrier is proposed along the eastern boundary of that. So we've had one or two, you can see in the 8.37, we did have an objection on the basis there could be this noise and nuisance. But I would just emphasise that the allocation of this land for a neighbourhood centre is very long standing. It goes back to 2013. It's inevitable that there will be activity, and that activity will sometimes bring a little bit of disturbance, but that's the nature of these kinds of uses. We will do our best, nevertheless, to minimise any problems and issues. There's then a section on highways, parking and transport impacts. All I would really do at this stage is emphasise that we've given a lot of priority to the permeability of Stortford Fields and ensuring that all of these developments are well connected by cycleways and by footpaths. And of course, there's also the benefit of the local bus, the 311, which would serve this site, this locality. Parking standards seem to be satisfactory. We'll make sure there's cycle parking available. And very importantly, we'll also introduce or require the introduction of electric vehicle charging points, and not only the provision of specific points, but also to ensure that there is a power supply and cabling available to extend the provision as the years go by, if the government's expectation that we'll all be driving electric vehicles in due course is realised. There's a section on climate change, which is, of course, critical for all the developments that we deal with. And there's a number of features in there which you would expect in terms of following our policy and exceeding in 8.46 the minimum values in Part L of the building regs in terms of energy and controlling water consumption and so on. And those are the key issues, Chairman. We are seeking a number of planning obligations, Section 106 obligations from the developer, which are also set out. And we have a long list of conditions, which I have substantially revised since this report was distributed. And I sent to all committee members today the much amended list, which I again won't go through in detail, but if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The draft legal agreement heads of terms have not progressed too much before or between this report going out and today. We will, if you treat this application favourably, we will spend a couple of weeks with the developers going through these heads of terms and ensuring that they are properly followed through. So on balance, Chairman, I do feel that the development is policy compliant in all the ways that we would wish it to be. The housing is satisfactory, car parking and all the things that we've been talking about. So overall, I feel that it's a sustainable development and one that will bring great benefit to the local community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Stephen, for that very comprehensive presentation.
Chairman?
Yes.
Just before we go to the public speakers, I believe Councillor Kay was offline for a short period of time, not sure for how long. Which bit did he miss, in case there's anything he missed that was crucial? I want to just check with him how much he might or may not have missed.
Yeah, I missed just a couple of minutes, I think, of Stephen Tapper's presentation when he was going through the list on the 8-point ones, but I don't think it was anything crucial. So yeah, I think that should be fine.
Thank you very much for that, Peter. Could I just say, Jonathan, that obviously you can ask questions when the time comes. So if you do feel that there's something in that section of the report you want to ask a question on, feel free to do so.
Thanks.
Okay, that's very, very good. So thank you again, Stephen, for that very comprehensive presentation. Just looking sideways at Peter Mannings, we now turn to public speakers.
Yes.
As I understand it, we do not have a speaker against.
Correct.
We do have a speaker for.
Yes, she has 6 minutes and I will time her. It's Laura Grimmerson.
And can we just be clear on how many minutes does she have, Peter?
6.
6.
Strategic side.
Okay. Okay. That's as long as we're all agreed on that. So have you let her into the room, as it were?
I'll just admit it now, Chairman.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. It's Will that does that. Laura, I think you've joined us. I think we can see you. You're very welcome. Thank you for being with us this evening. I'm just going to, I dare say you know, but I'm just going to make sure you know the rules of engagement. So you have 6 minutes, and you will have 6 minutes from the moment you start to speak. There's more than one person here who will be timing you. And if you do get 6 minutes, the guillotine just comes down. So you do your best to get your comments into 6 minutes.
Great, thank you.
Over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, members and officers. So my name's Laura Grimmerson and I'm from Giddings Planning. I'm the agent for this planning application and I'm here tonight on behalf of Frontier Estates, who are the applicants. So I'm going to focus on 3 key points this evening. The first will be to give some background to the scheme. The second will be to detail how we've worked with the council. And the third will be to outline the benefits of the proposals. So first of all, then, let's give a bit of background to the scheme. As you're all aware, this is the first application that has been submitted for this much needed local facility, and we're really pleased to be working with the council to bring this forwards. From the outset, our vision has been to deliver an exciting and vibrant local centre, which will form a landmark destination within the Western neighbourhood, and which will provide day-to-day services and facilities for the local community in a sustainable and accessible location. Each of the individual uses plays an important role in delivering the local centre as a single entity, and we are really pleased to have progressed to an advanced stage with intended operators for the care home, the surgery, the affordable apartments and the nursery. Secondly, then, I'm going to give some detail on how we've worked with the council to shape the proposals. Since November 2018, we've worked closely with the council to shape the proposals which are before you this evening. We engaged in detailed discussions at the pre-application stage over the course of a year. And the pre-application process included early discussions with the Town Council and the Bishop Stortford Group, and a consultation exercise with local residents. We have continued to work closely with the council since the application was submitted in December 2019, and as a result have made some design amendments which were submitted in April 2020. It's been great to work with officers who are willing to engage in detailed discussions, and I'd just like to thank Stephen and Lucy for their time and effort in helping to shape the proposal. So finally, I'm going to outline some of the key benefits of the scheme. We hope you agree that there are significant environmental, social and economic benefits associated with the scheme, as summarised in the leaflet which we provided earlier this week. The site occupies a sustainable location where the principle of a local centre has already been established. The proposed uses will be provided within well-designed and high-quality buildings which have a modern appearance that complements the wider development and allows the local centre to form a key landmark within the Western neighbourhood. An attractive public square on the site frontage will provide both a safe pedestrian arrival point and opportunities for social gathering and events. High quality landscaping will be provided across the site, and we are committed to delivering this and to managing it appropriately to ensure that it continues to contribute to the creation of a green and pleasant environment in the long term. This is of course something which will be secured by condition as suggested in the committee report. The proposed local centre will support the emerging Western neighbourhood by providing day-to-day services and facilities that are within easy reach of residents. It will also help to meet a very significant need for doctor's surgery and nursery accommodation. It will deliver much needed affordable housing which exceeds policy requirements and which will make a positive contribution to affordable housing delivery within the district, where there is a very real need for this. It will also respond to an identified shortfall of care beds by delivering residential and nursing accommodation for the elderly. In the short term, the proposal will result in construction jobs and a general uplift in productivity. 155 long-term employment opportunities are anticipated across the care home, the doctor's surgery and the nursery in a range of roles, with additional employment opportunities arising as the flexible commercial uses become occupied. So to conclude, we're really pleased to bring forward the application, which seeks to deliver an exciting and vibrant local centre for the local community. We've worked closely with officers to shape a scheme which will bring wide-ranging environmental, social and economic benefits, and respectfully request that planning permission is granted this evening. Thank you very, very much for your time, and I think I'm well under 6 minutes, hopefully.
Yeah, I think you are. Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we've now got to the point where if members have questions or observations, this is the moment. So I'm going to look for hands, if any. I've got Councillor Page, I think, Councillor Jones. Okay, we'll take those, and Councillor Crystal. So we'll take those three as a first batch in that order, please.
Councillor Kay after.
The other three I saw, so we'll take those three in the first batch. So Councillor Page, away you go, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm pleased to see another piece in the jigsaw of Bishop Stortford North on its way to becoming reality. And I thank Stephen Tapper for a comprehensive report that he's given tonight. But I do think he's put a rosy gloss on some of the aspects. We have two references in the report expressing disappointment that the square has been eaten into by the care home and by the turning head. And I know Stephen acknowledged those, but it is a provision less than was expected of the original planning time. One thing that particularly concerns me and worries me is the responsibility given to the developer to find tenants to provide meanwhile uses to occupy commercial premises. And I understand from the report that all the commercial premises are unoccupied or unreserved at the moment. Now, on the meanwhile uses, I'm fearful that the uses may not always be suitable, and they may present something of a blight on an otherwise attractive neighbourhood centre. I wonder if the officer, Stephen, can give me some reassurance that use of these commercial premises will be monitored, and there is some mechanism for the council to really to mould or to guide the developer into producing and renting, finding tenants for these commercial premises. And whilst we're on the land usage, I'm concerned about the affordable housing ratio not working so much for affordable rented, particularly at a time when there are lots of low-paid workers who wish to remain in and serve the local community. Now, I've got a number of other questions, but I think I'd prefer to just stagger them a little bit. If you can just answer my questions on land use at the moment.
Thank you very much, Tim. I think you were second up, Jeff. So, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chairman. It's really good actually to see the neighbourhood facility. It's very well equipped neighbourhood centre. You know, with the care home, surgery, obviously residential and retail mixed, nursery, right next to the school, plaza. Disappointingly small plaza. Okay, it's going to grow once the hammerhead is gone. I still think, you know, looking at the drawings, it is pretty small. Wouldn't it have lovely to have seen the car park buried underground, the plaza above it? But of course, you know, that's not going to happen. That'd be a pipe dream. But yeah, really well equipped. So I'm very, very pleased to see that. That certainly is what is needed there. And I'm really pleased reading through the report that it seems to me that the developers have worked very closely with the planning officers in amending probably what was the original plans to come up with this. So well done, Stephen, on that, and of course to Laura, the agent, for her presentation. My only concern is you were talking about policy compliant. I mean, it isn't policy compliant when it comes to the 10-year split with the residential. There's just a bit of confusion there that perhaps Stephen can answer. I know Tim touched on it as well, the 10-year split. Stephen mentioned an 86-14 split, 86 being the shared ownership. In the report in 816, it's down as 76-24. So perhaps that could be clarified. But of course, that is the wrong way round. We would normally have 76 affordable rent and 24 shared ownership. So disappointing to see that. Not sure the reason behind it, but it goes against. It's not policy compliant with that 10-year split. That's all I would say. But yeah, that's the only disappointment I can see in the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And I think third up in this first round was Councillor Ben Crystal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I had a couple of questions. The first is about cycleway links. As I understand it from the documents, the Bishop Stortford Circular Ride cycleway passes some way around near this site, and I wondered if Stephen could just tell me a bit about the links from the site to the cycleway, and whether there are specific cycle paths on this site, or whether they link to this site. My other question is from the sustainability statement, which the developers provided. On page 8, there's a breakdown of the energy efficiency of the individual buildings, and it's great to see that the care home and the nursery and the surgery are well above Part L building regs. 34% for the nursery is very impressive. I was a bit confused by the figures for the apartments. They appear to show 0%. I just wondered if you could clarify how they fit with Part L building regs as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crystal. Okay, Stephen, if you could just respond to those various comments and observations, be grateful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your comments. So, Councillor Page is disappointed with the, as others are, with the fact that the square is not quite as big as we would have wished, and further compromised by the turning head. This is not something that's completely in our control at the moment, or the developers. It's outside the developer's site, obviously. But I do intend ensuring that the parties are brought together. The consortium, highways, and the developer, to see what we can do by way of a commitment to ensure that that turning head is brought into the scheme in due course. I can't promise, but I think it would be a real shame if we were unable to achieve that. So there's work to be done in that respect. Trying to see what the next point was. Again, the affordable housing ratio, which Councillor Jones also mentioned. I have discussed this already in my presentation, but the policy in the district plan is fairly broad brush in terms of expecting all housing to respect the recommendations in the SHMAR, the Strategic Housing Market Assessment. But in practice, across the district, developers also have commercial considerations to take into account. And you will normally find that the mix that we approve departs to some extent from the SHMAR according to the location and the character of the development. So, for example, the Goods Yard development in Bishop Stortford has a very high proportion of flats as opposed to houses, and it does so because of its location and the particular requirements of that developer. It's balanced, of course, by the fact that many more suburban developments or rural developments will have a higher proportion of market housing. So over the district as a whole, it tends to shake out. Now, in this case, we're talking about a relatively small development of 29 homes, and they have had a view, the developer, to what the SHMAR says, and they have offered a proportion of affordable rented, and the rest is shared ownership. But remember, they are all affordable. The developer could have taken the view that he wanted market houses here, flats here. It wouldn't be unattractive, in my view, for market homes. But you would have then had a much smaller number of affordable homes brought into the, made available to the community. So looking at it in that context, whether it's 86-14 or 76, whatever, in the SHMAR, and the SHMAR changes, of course, over the years, the recommendations there change. We still think, myself and Housing Services, that this is a good proposal, a balanced proposal, and one which brings a lot of value to our affordable housing mix within the district. Was there another point that Tim made there?
The point about what we call meanwhile uses.
Sorry, yes, of course. Now, I'm not sure we've pursued this in the past, but with commercial developments like this, it can take quite a considerable time for a developer to be able to attract the right kind of rentals, the occupiers that we all desire. Retail in particular would be a small store offering a variety of goods, whether it's a little Budgeons or something like that, or a little co-op. They can be quite particular about the location, the catchment, and of course the property market for commercial changes all the time and brings uncertainty. So it's frequently the case that these kinds of developments will have vacancies for some time. So elsewhere, councils and developers have begun to introduce the idea of meanwhile uses, which are very often, and this is picking up Tim's particular point, actually quite discreet. They're very often very small businesses which are looking for their first premises. Sometimes they are small businesses making goods, might be clothes, it might be, I don't know, candles or anything, artsy craftsy things, and they want somewhere to start selling to the community and build up their business. They want that experience, and they're very welcome in schemes like this because they bring footfall and they bring a certain vitality to the development. But it's very strictly on a very short-term rental basis, if indeed they pay rent at all in some cases. And it brings some benefit to the developer as well as to the community. But it's short-term because the developer still needs to pursue commercial opportunities and can't have these meanwhile uses standing in the way. What we will have to do is have a Section 106 obligation with the developer in which we will say something about what the process will be that lies behind the attraction or the marketing to meanwhile uses. And I do agree with Tim that we need to, in a sense, be a backstop to ensure that, in our view, the uses that come forward are appropriate in what is, as I've said before, a development that is adjacent to residential. I think that we can work with a developer very easily on that, because the chances are that if we find a particular use objectionable, the developer probably will as well, because they have a view to protecting the amenity of the residents of the flats, the apartments above those commercial units. So I think we can probably arrange Section 106 obligations that will properly control that. And we can obviously speak on behalf of the community there in suggesting that perhaps some things are less acceptable. But I go back to my original point, which is that as far as I am aware, for the most part, uses that come forward are quite discreet and generally very welcome. Councillor Jones was very happy to see this, like I am, development come forward with such a good mix of uses. And I think, again, he repeated the fact that the plaza is on the tight side. I would, though, say that I'm expecting a very high standard of landscaping of that area. I'm expecting surfacing to be good, seating, lighting, and of course the tree planting. So I'm optimistic that although it might be a little bit smaller than we would like, it's still big enough to put a couple of exhibition stands or have some music or something playing do something that will maintain the activity and make this a pleasant place to sit, particularly if there is a cafe adjacent to it. So I think it'll work, but we need to see if we can get that turning ahead to make it better. Otherwise, I've just addressed the points about the affordable housing ratio between affordable and shared ownership. Councillor Crystal talked about or asked questions about the cycle links. The whole of Bishop Stortford is very well connected, both within and externally. And I would commend to Councillor Crystal having a look at another application we have at present, which is design principles for the eastern neighbourhood, where there's an illustrative master plan. If you put that together with the master plan for Stortford, for the western neighbourhood, you can see very well that there are plenty of greenways which make very, very nice cycle links, both north and east-west, and they all terminate at points where you can then pick up a wider footpath network within Bishop Stortford, and ultimately the circular routes referred to. Some of those are existing footpaths and bridleways which have been protected throughout the site, and others are very new and very attractive. This is a very green development in terms of open space and landscaping, and I think when it's complete that will become very obvious. It'll be a very pleasant place to cycle and walk. He then refers to the very good performance within the care home and the day nursery in terms of exceeding building regulation requirements for energy, lighting and so on. Disappointed about the flats, the apartments. I will go back to the developers and see if there's something that can be done by way of improvement there. But of course, we also have probably more severe cost limitations. I don't know, because there's a registered provider who is in the background there, who will have their views about how these things should work. But I will pick up the point and just get a better understanding of that and see if there's any further flexibility.
Okay, thank you very much again, Stephen. I think that deals with that round of questions. I've now got Councillor Kay, and I thought I saw Councillor Andrews' hand go up. So if you have a question, yes, you do, David. Okay, so and Councillor Kemp. So this is our batch of 3 for this time. So Kay, Andrews, Kemp.
Thanks very much indeed, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I think that the public square, it's a shame that if you go over the continent, the public square is in the middle of the location that we're talking about. Here it's tucked away. And I think that's a shame. I think Councillor Jones's point, you know, if it would be where the car park was, that would have been great. In terms of retail, I suppose none of us really knows what will happen with retail, particularly after, you know, COVID-19, and who knows about shops on traditional high streets, never mind new developments, but one hopes that there will be, you know, appropriate shops, including a grocery shop or a small supermarket on this site. My main point, though, was on 8.22, where you're referring to the care home. And it says there has been an increasing demand for such accommodation in recent years to meet the needs of an aging population. Now, if you were to ask the Director of Adult Care and Health at Hertfordshire County Council that there is a need, he would say no, there isn't a need. In fact, you could argue there's too many care homes. We've also seen many in other parts of the country going out of business because there is a trend, certainly within adult care and health, to actually keep people in their own homes and have various facilities and care workers going into their own homes. So in this reference of demand for such accommodation, where does that demand come from? Is it from a particular care home company that wants to have a care home, or is it from the developers? be interested to know the answer to that one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you. Now, David Andrews, please, David.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, much of what I was concerned about has been dealt with, but I must firstly totally support Jonathan in the comments he's just made. We saw 7 or 8 years ago that warden controlled or warden assisted premises became less and less popular. And we're seeing the same, I think, with care homes, because there is a tendency to try and keep people in their home. And I have currently in the process of doing that with one of our relatives. But my question, the remaining question I have, and it may seem on the face of it to be rather shallow, but at 8.30, and much has been said about the plaza, and much has been said about the turning head, but the last sentence seems to be a bit sort of wobbly in that it says negotiations continue regarding removing the turning head once it's no longer required for buses. My concern is, A, that will contribute, we've all established that will contribute to the plaza. The other is, nature abhors a vacuum, and if the buses aren't using it, people will park there or use it for some other purpose. So could we be a little bit firmer in the negotiations and actually condition that will, when the bus service ceases to require it, get replaced or taken back in? Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. And last on this batch is Councillor Ian Kemp, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to commend this proposal. It's very good to see a proposal for a community centre coming forward promptly in the development, because sometimes these things get neglected till later. And I think we all very much welcome that. I think that's shown by the fact there's only been 2 objections, one of which was on noise, and the second was on electric car charging points, which has been very ably covered by the officer concerned. And so that there are plenty of electric car charging points. I think there are many other good things about it, the nursery provision. Personally, I'd like to speak in favour of the care home provision. There has been a significant demand in terms of elderly population. I think in particular, however, there is a need for purpose-built care homes and nursing homes. Some of the existing stock, from my own experience in searching for one, for a relative, is converted accommodation which isn't very suitable. I think this is an ideal location for a care home in many ways, because it's adjacent to the surgery, and also because it's adjacent to shops. Something that's sometimes overlooked, I think, with care homes is that people will want to visit relatives, and seen that the car parking provision is not always adequate. In this case, there is a large amount of car parking provision immediately adjacent, which will avoid that problem. So I think on all those grounds, this is something that I welcome seeing as part of the application. I do still have the slight disappointment that it's excellent to see that 100% affordable housing, but a shame that it is almost completely for purchase. And even though there's a lot of affordable housing here, it would not, I think, have been very difficult to go up from the 7 units that are proposed to the 10, which is all that would be needed to give the same amount of rented affordable housing as would occur in a standard scheme meeting the 40% ratio. And maybe that could be commended to the developers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ian. Stephen, obviously the affordable housing issue recurs. You've already spoken to that, but you've got care home, buses, and another little dollop of affordable homes.
Yeah. Okay. Still concerned about the square expressed by Councillor Kay. You know, I think we all agree it would be nice if it was bigger. But I come back to the point that the success of an area like that is partly about the quality of it and the uses around it. and the degree of the amount of footfall that it attracts. And hopefully there would be some entertainment and activity provided. I'm sure whoever manages that aspect of the development would be able to attract people, particularly in the summer, to provide entertainment. It's about working hard to make that area work. I will do my very best to secure that turning head into the development. It can't be I don't think it can be a condition at this stage. It's not within the control of the applicants at all to do this, to acquire that area. They need the full cooperation, probably, of the Highway Authority in due course. I take the point that other people will park in it if the bus ceases to require it as a turnaround, but I think that's fairly easily dealt with. Demand for the care home. I think that what we're looking at here is a very modern set of premises. And the developer has made the point to me that this provides the very best of care, particularly when we're dealing with people who have dementia. A lot of these people would not be happy at home. They're living in this kind of accommodation because that's where they get the very best medical care. And the facilities that this care home operator, I'm not allowed to say who it is, in fact I've forgotten anyway, the facilities they put in will be of high quality, and they will be able to control, for example, another outbreak, infectious outbreak, very effectively because of the design of the premises. Every room will have its own ensuite bathroom and toilet. Because it's designed on the basis of wings, they can create isolated areas very easily. All of these things make this kind of care home particularly attractive. And I come back to the point that they are saying that despite what the Director of Adult Services might say about the district or about Hertfordshire, there is evidence of a need within this particular locality in Bishop Stortford. So I don't think it's challengeable on any of those grounds at all. I think we have to go with that and trust in the developer and the operator of the care home that this will be successful.
Now I've got Councillor Kemp. Yeah. Councillor Kemp's question about the
housing. Yes, the point has been well made by everyone that they're a little bit disappointed in the amount of rented, and I will go back to the developer with Councillor Kemp's proposal that everyone would be a lot happier if it was possible to have 10 rented units in place of 7. We will see what we can do.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, I saw Councillor Beckett's hand go up before that round of questions and answers, and I can see Councillor Redfern as well. So that's 2. I don't know whether Councillor Page wants to come back with any further questions, because you did indicate that. Yes, Tim?
Yes, I would like to come back, Chairman.
Okay, we'll take you 3rd on this round then. So, Terence, away you go.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'll come clean alongside Councillor Page that we both sit on the team that works for the council on looking at Bishop Stortford North, along with Stephen. So I know the amount of work that's gone into this development and the changes that have happened. A couple of points actually, and it seems like we're flogging the same dead horses, Stephen, and I do apologise. But I recall the last meeting we had on this development where they presented this scheme to us, that the highways officer unequivocally said they didn't need that turning circle, and that the developer in this case was going to look at taking it out of the scheme before it came to planning. And actually it was one of the notes I had, and then you went and mentioned it in your thing, and I thought I'll scrub that out, but I thought I'll mention it anyway because we seem to be going around in circles on that. And then the other point in relation to Councillor Crystal's comments on the energy of the residential, of course, that also has a knock-on effect to the energy efficiency of the retail units beneath that as well, which makes me feel that the building fabric of that block or those blocks is below the standard of everything else that they're building on that site. So, but of course, if the external fabric was strong enough, then even if you average the flats, some of them would achieve good compliance against Part L over and above, and only the external ones would probably fall short. So I would just like that looked at if we could. And my final point, which is an operational one actually, but something I don't know whether we can put in terms of planning, is the good old devil of the airport up the road, and we're creating a number of attractive free parking spaces for people to not park at the airport and get a taxi in, and create a huge problem for people wanting to use this neighbourhood centre. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beckett. Carolyn Redfern.
Very incisive comments then about the airport. I hadn't thought of that. I just really wanted to add my disappointment about the affordable homes, and again we seem to be flogging a dead horse, but it just occurs to me that I do fully back the care home, but it just popped into my head how many of those people who work in the care home will be able to afford these affordable houses, or even get a rented house in that same development. And it just seems such a great disappointment that we keep on missing this target time after time. I know that these are extra affordable houses, but they're not going to be affordable to the people working in that care home. And that's all really, that's just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have Councillor Page, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, I've got two really separate areas of to question. First of all, on the conditions, in order to make life easier for the residents, there are conditions going to be attached to construction traffic management, and a stewardship or management company will come in to manage the maintenance of the flats. Well, at the moment, both of those facilities are available elsewhere on the site, and we've had evidence that they don't work. It's quite frustrating not really being able to know who is responsible for enforcing the conditions, and I wonder if we could strengthen our conditions by some sort of enforcement opportunity. So that's one aspect of my questions. The other aspect of the question is that in the report, I think it's at 816, the fact that there is a contract completed to acquire these 29 apartments by a registered provider, it's noted that this is seen as a material consideration. I don't quite understand why it's a material consideration. I'd like some guidance as to how that has come into place. And if it was to be a material consideration, I would have thought we should have a balancing, something balancing the report along the lines of viability. But there's no discussion on viability, just an assertion that the prior purchase of the apartments is a material consideration.
Thank you, Tim. Just to show, I know Councillor Stowe's got a question, but we'll take you in the next round, Tony. So if you could comment there, Stephen.
Yes, thank you. So, Councillor Beckett, I will follow up on his point about the energy efficiency of the apartments and knock-on effect to retail below. Try to get more clarity about that, and I will get back to him in terms of what we discover. Airport parking, certainly an issue in many parts of Bishop Stortford. We have conditions that require that we have full details of the way in which the car park will be managed. And we will ensure that they have enforcement in place to ensure that people do not exceed their stay, whatever limitation is put on that, to discourage this kind of airport parking. Of course, it's not in the developers' interests either to have people taking spaces for airport parking. So I'm sure they will undertake controls of that sort. Less they can do, less we can do about on-street parking, but certainly in terms of this development and its parking, it should be very controllable through that process of us understanding and working with them on the means of management. Councillor Redfern, again, the issue of the affordable rented, which I've already offered to take back to the developer. And her point about the care home workers probably being unable to afford housing in this area is a point well made. And yeah, we'll see if we can get some sort of movement in that respect. Councillor Page mentioned the construction traffic management condition and stewardship again of the car park, and suggested that it's not been working well elsewhere. By that, he means that we have seen some failures in the quality of management within Stortford Fields. The consortium has had a lot of difficulty with contractors who've not performed adequately and who have not established good relationships with residents. And in fact, I think the Bishop Stortford North group that Councillor Beckett referred to will probably be having a discussion at its next meeting with the developers about this issue and the need to ensure that much stronger community relations are put in place, which enables people to draw attention to deficiencies and issues in these sorts of areas. But I would be the first one to agree with him that we don't want that to continue as the rule. We want this to be a very well managed development. He refers to 816 and I reference to the fact that that there's a registered provider in the background as a material issue. I think it is material that this, because it gives certainty about what we are considering here. And if we're going to go back and negotiate a higher ratio of rented, it's very valuable, very helpful that we know who we're dealing with. So it has a materiality in that regard, but only in that respect and no other. But it's always helpful to know who you're negotiating with. And I've offered to go back on that.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, so I've got Councillor Stowe, and we've given this a pretty good thrash. So I've got Councillor Crystal and Councillor Kemp, and I think we'll try and hold it at that. Let's see how we go on this round of questions. So Tony, away you go.
Thanks, Chairman. It's just a point. I mean, there's lots of good things about this site, and I noticed there's a good suds drainage system. But I think when we've got buildings like care homes and schools, we should always be endeavouring to get a grey water system in for flushing loos. It's quite important. We're going into time when, you know, our water levels have got to come down, and we've got 78 units here. You said that there's going to be an ensuite on every room. That's 78 loos, and then all the staff lose as well. Now, can't we encourage developers to do this grey water system? Perhaps you can say that. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Taking them in the order, I think it was Ben Crystal, and then we come to you possibly last, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. Just a very couple of quick comments. I fully agree with Councillor Stowe. Really sensible comment. That would be great to get those kind of things in. Also wanted to thank you, Stephen, for following up on the electric car club question. I think that would really help to address, if you can encourage the developers to make it work. I think that would really help to tackle some of the parking issues. I think the latest data I've seen is that each car in a car club displaces more than 10 cars on the road, and so I think that would be really valuable. That's all I want to say. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Kemp.
And likewise, quick comments. I'd back up Councillor Stowe and Councillor Crystal on the grey water side. On the energy side, if the fabric first approach, which is the right one, is being followed as set out there, then one wouldn't expect the apartments to have a poor energy efficiency. So one hopes that that is a misprint, but certainly I'd like it followed up. And when that's being done, also could there be an inquiry specifically about whether solar panels might be considered for provision on the roofing?
Thank you very much, Councillor Kemp. Stephen, Tim, are you just putting your hand up to say you want to speak again, or are you checking your picture or something?
Yes, I would like to speak again.
Okay, that's fine. We'll pick you up next round. Okay, Stephen, where you go.
Thank you. Grey water. In the course of discussing sustainability matters with the applicants, I was advised that this is not an option for care homes for sanitation purposes. So I don't think we'll be able to achieve that. There's presumably regulation behind that, or licensing or something that prevents that happening. But that's the advice I've had so far. Councillor Crystal, yes, we're very eager to see if we can achieve a car club or a branch of another car club at the Western Neighbourhood Centre. It's a very appropriate place to put one, and from their reaction, the applicants seem to be very happy to have a look at this option with us. Councillor Kemp, fabric first. Yes, that's the usual approach that we see today in order to achieve good levels of efficiency. And I will again check the facts on that with the applicants and also pick up the point about solar panels. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, I'm going to turn then to Councillor Page. I'm going to make this the last question, everyone. We've been canvassing this item for quite a long time now. So, Tim, you get the last word before we move to voting. Thank you. Tim, I'm assuming you're unmuting. Oh.
I think he's got connection problems there, Chairman. He's frozen a bit.
No, he's moving. He's moving. He's okay. He's with us.
Yeah, hi. I got dropped out there for a minute or two.
That's okay. Where you go, Tim?
Okay, well, the last area I want to talk about really is equally to do with the Development Management Committee, as it is of this particular application. I'll refer to the draft legal agreement, heads of terms, in the report, where there seem to be too many open issues. Now, this evening, we've had questions very well fielded by the case officer and many assurances that he will go back and talk to the relevant people about the concerns that we've expressed. But I just think that we might be shifting over the rationale for the DMC in looking at the report, making observations, and then going away with an assurance that the topics brought up will be discussed in due course. I just feel that DMC might be losing some of the sharp edge of its scrutiny powers with this sort of thing. If this happens too often, then I do think we ought to be reviewing the incisiveness of DMC.
Thank you very much, Councillor Page. I think the point you make there is understood. I see Councillor Andrews' hand has gone up. I'll just take you quickly then, Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to go back to some comments that Stephen made at the very beginning. We've actually been working with this for an extremely long time. Stephen mentioned 2013. I'm not sure it doesn't go a little earlier than that. Certainly a number of us have devoted countless hours. And I remember an early meeting was quite unique from the Development Management Committee point of view, in that it went on for, I think, close on 8 hours with only a very, very short break. And negotiations were taking place in the background throughout the meeting. So there were 4 or 5 meetings like that, but that was, I think, they held the record. Councillor Rose Cheswright chaired on those several occasions. But those of us that were there will remember it, I'm sure, for a very long time to come. It's nice to see these things come to fruition. Hopefully, in a year or two, we'll see people enjoying these facilities and using them. And I think all of us can take some heart from the fact that we've been part of this process. It's not over, but it's been a long time coming, and I think we're actually getting to the stage now where we can see, there's going to be payback for our residents, which is what we're here for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. I'm sensing that you particularly remember the break in the 8-hour meeting.
Yes, but somebody got to the refreshments before I did. So somebody snaffled all the decent sausage rolls. I was left with a couple of curly sandwiches, I recall.
Yes. I just want to come back. We are very near now to moving to a vote, but just want to come back to Councillor Page's last comments. I'm just looking in the direction of our legal officer, Victoria. I'm sure that the process that we're taking to this application, the approach we're taking to this application is appropriate, but maybe you could just confirm that for us, Victoria. Beyond the very general point that Tim makes, and makes it well, there is a suggestion in Tim's question that as to whether we could find an appropriate way, whilst delivering certainty on the decision we're going to make this evening, for officers to in some way come back and report progress to the committee. I don't know whether you can advise whether there would be an appropriate manner for that, or we simply need to make a decision tonight on the papers that are in front of us.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, this is not an unusual situation to have whereby officers have delegated authority to go away and discuss the finer details of the Section 106 agreement and conditions. Members will recall that this happens on most of the strategic sites and the important sites within the district. So it is a sound process, and members can make a determination on the papers in front of them this evening.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Stephen's hand is up. Very briefly, Stephen, please.
Just very briefly indeed. I think Tim's concerns are quite right. You've raised a lot of issues, and I've said that I'll go away and try to make progress with those. They're generally not at the heart of the issues that we're looking at, but they're important, and I will do my best. I just mentioned that we do have, it's been mentioned before, the Bishop Stortford North group, and that's a very good place to share and discuss many of these issues and share updates as they come forward. And of course, a lot of the issues are also covered by conditions which will have to be discharged in due course.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Okay, we've had a very, very good debate, lots of very well-judged questions, very comprehensive responses from Stephen, for which we're very grateful, Stephen. So we have in front of us the application. I'm looking for a proposer. Councillor Beckett, seconder. Tim, is that your hand up for seconding?
Yes, it is my hand.
Thank you very much. So Councillor Beckett is proposing and Councillor Tim Page is seconding the application before us. If I could ask all those in favour, please, to show your hand to the screen and leave it there long enough so that it can be counted, please. Thank you.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 11 hands, Chair.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Can I just be clear, is that on both elements of that recommendation, yes?
Yeah, I think so, yes. I'm taking that to be the case. Yes, David's confirming it amongst others. So I think on that vote, that's I've not voted as the chairman, simply as the chairman, but that's a unanimous vote, isn't it, Peter?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So following a very, very good debate, very good questions and excellent responses from Stephen, this is to confirm that application 3-19-2626 FUL for mixed use Western Neighbourhood Local Centre comprising of doctor's surgery class D1, children's nursery class D1, 78 bed care home class C2, 29 affordable apartments class C3, flexible commercial floor space within class A1, A2, A3, A4, D1, D2. The proposal includes the provision of a substation, car parking, access, landscaping and other associated works. That application has been granted. Thank you all very much indeed. Just going to allow a couple of minutes because I think Laura Grimmerson will now completely leave the meeting. I think she has. Very, very good. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So we're now going to move on to item 5B on the agenda. This is at page 67 of the pack. This is application 3-20-0413 FUL. This is for the demolition of existing science building and the erection of a new two-storey teaching block, use class D1, with associated landscaping and the installation of an additional block of interim temporary classrooms during construction, approximately 1,068 square metres GEA, alongside the retention of temporary units approved under planning consent 318-2098 FUL. And this is in relation to the Leaventhorpe School in Stawbridgeworth. The case officer on the papers is Rachel, but I'm not sure I see is Rachel in the, David Snell is going to cover this and speak to this. David, if you would like to present this paper to the committee, we'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Will, if you could go to a site plan, please, if you may. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chairman. The new school building is to be located within the footprint of the existing teaching block in order to allow the school to continue to operate during construction. Temporary classrooms are to be erected on the site. These temporary classrooms will be located to the west of the existing school buildings on the existing tennis courts and adjacent to the existing temporary classrooms that are to be retained throughout the construction. The main issues for considerations are, of course, the principle of the development, the design, the impact on residential amenity, highway impact, flood risk management. The report deals with design at paragraph 8.14. And Will, if you could go to an elevation drawing, thank you. Thank you. The design of the building very much reflects the adjoining school buildings, not surprisingly. You will see that the landscape officer has no objection. Strategy and layout plans, indicative layout plans, I might say, for the landscaping surrounding the site were submitted. But the detail of that landscaping is the subject of condition 5 recommended, and the maintenance of the subsequently approved landscape detail is the subject of condition 6. You will see that paragraphs 8.39 to 8.32 address the sustainability of the building, which we know from, or I know from previous recent committees, is a concern of members on school buildings. The fabric of the building takes the fabric first approach with high levels of efficiency and and control of CO2 emissions, with it reflective of what we are trying to seek in policies CC1 and CC2. The applicant has confirmed in the submission that water supply is restricted by the various efficiency measures in the building in order to address policy Watt 4. Members should note that, importantly, recommended condition 4 requires the removal of the existing and proposed temporary buildings on the 21st of December 2021. That is to reflect the construction period, and also addresses the very long period temporary buildings that are existing on the site. So it addresses their removal as well. Of course, this is important because the site is within the green belt, and we need to maintain the openness of the green belt. And also, as you'll see, the new temporary buildings are on tennis courts, which are existing sports provision for the school. So we need to secure the removal of the temporary buildings at the end of construction to replace that lost sports provision. In terms of parking impact, no additional parking is proposed on the site. However, no additional pupils are proposed and no additional staff either. Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions. I would just draw your attention to the late representations in respect of the reported neighbour objection. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, David. I think we now turn to speakers against and for. I'm looking at Peter. So far as I'm aware, we do not have a speaker against.
Correct. Yeah, it's Mr. Bob Robinson. He's in the waiting room, I believe.
But we do have a speaker in favour, and this speaker will get 3 minutes. Is that right, Peter?
Correct. I'm ready to time.
Yep. Okay. So if we can ask Mr. Robinson to come and join us. Hello, Mr. Robinson. Can you you can hear us? We can't hear you. Let me.
Sorry, unmute myself.
Okay, I'm just going to give you the rules of engagement so you're very clear. I'm sure they've been explained, but just to be very clear. So you get 3 minutes, and the clock will start from the moment you start to speak, but the clock will come down on you at 3 minutes. So you do need to try and get your comments into 3 minutes. Start when you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, officers and members. My name is Bob Robinson of DPP Planning, and we are the agents for the application. There are two elements to this application. The first relates to I'm getting feedback here. The first relates to the development of a new 2-storey teaching block broadly on the site of the school's existing single-storey science block. And the second relates to the provision of additional temporary classrooms to ensure continuity of education at the school during the period of construction. Dealing first with the new teaching block, this will provide new accommodation for the school's science teaching and for the 6th floor, and replaces the current life expired building. It broadly occupies the footprint of the current science block, but is now 2 as opposed to single-storey. Whilst this portion of the school site is located close to the housing on School Lane, as highlighted at paragraphs 818 to 822 of your officer's report, a combination of increased distance from the boundary and the relationship to properties on School Lane ensures that the impact on residential amenity is neutral. Turning now to the temps, whilst the original proposal had been to replace the buildings presently on site, issues with supply of the replacement units has meant that this option has had to be abandoned, and a mix of single and 2-storey accommodation acquired from another school site and refurbished is now to be provided in addition to the current units. These units have already been installed on site, as if they could not be relocated during late June, early July, then the opportunity to acquire these units would have been lost, prejudicing the whole development. The location of the additional units has had a further impact on the short-term availability of tennis courts at the school, but arrangements are already in place to utilise the adjacent leisure centre as alternative provision. And I'd point out that Sport England have not objected to the proposals. The additional units do represent a further incursion into the Greenbelt. However, as your officer notes, this is a temporary situation, and all the units will be removed by the end of 2021 and the tennis courts reinstated. Finally, just as highlighted to the case officer, there is a minor error in proposed condition 12. Reference to a drainage layout plan P6 should be dated June 2020 and not May 2019. Subject to this amendment, I would ask you to endorse your officer's recommendation and grant consent for this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. Okay. I'll throw it open to the floor. Any questions, comments? Councillor Buckmaster. Where you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, as you all know, this is my ward, and I have to be very honest and upfront that I'm very keen for this to go through. You know, I've watched this school grow over a number of years, and as you know, with the future developments coming in Sawbridgeworth, we're going to have an extra 600 homes, and obviously subsequent number of extra pupils at the schools. So while this development isn't adding extra pupils now, it is aiding to future-proofing the school for when we do have those extra pupils. It's a very good school, and obviously what it's trying to do is update its facilities. The original school was built over 50 years ago with various extensions and blocks added on, and obviously these now need to be updated and replaced. The point of the temporary blocks on the tennis courts, again, you've noted they are temporary and will be removed, so hopefully, yeah, they're not an issue. My only question is the one on points 18, sorry, 8.19 to 8.21 about the residents in School Lane, and one resident in particular's concern over sort of being overlooked and the views from the classroom. It mentions that the temporary classroom windows are going to be obscured, but it doesn't say anything about the new building windows. And my query is are they going to be obscured as well, to reassure this resident? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Just looking to see if there are any other hands moving. Councillor Crystal and Councillor Kay in that order, and then we'll ask David Snell to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A technical question, I suppose. So this, as David said, and I think as the sustainability report for the school states, it's designed to meet exemplar design standards. But there's no specification given for how far beyond Part L the energy performance is expected to be, beyond mention of the building emission rate and the target emission rate. There's a difference between those two of 1.7%. Does that 1.7% represent the improvement of this building in terms of energy performance above Part L? That's my question.
Thank you, Ben. Jonathan Kay, thank you.
Just for clarification, am I right in saying the temporary classroom then, or classrooms, will be there for about 18 months? Have I got that right? Thank you.
Okay, David Snell. You're muted, David, if you are unaware.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the point was about school glazing of the new school building. I don't believe that is the case. I would have to look in detail at the plans, but from what is before me, I don't believe that the new school building has school glazing. But I'm quite happy to look at that point. In terms of energy performance, there was a comment about 1.7%. I'm just referring back to that, Chairman, if you don't mind. I would actually need to clarify that, whether what that 1.7% means. But what I would say, which I've said on occasions previously, in reference to the building regulations and your adopted policies in the district plan, that's your climate change policies and your not your water policy, but your climate change policies, CC1 and CC2, at present, they seek to encourage performance beyond the building regulations. They don't insist on, just to make that point. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, I was muted. I beg your pardon, David. I'm not sure you've responded to Councillor Kay's question, just for confirmation that these buildings will be up for 18 months.
Yes, I think we exchanged nods. Thank you. Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. Apologies.
Yes, you'd be very good on radio then, David.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very, very good. I wasn't sure. Did Councillor Jones' hand go up? Yes, it did, I think. Jeff, yeah. just before, just check, see if any other hands.
If you want to take someone else, because my ModGov has just crashed, so I could
Okay.
fire it up again if you've got someone else.
I don't actually have anybody else at the moment, Jeff.
All right, just give us 1 second, because I was referring to a particular item. If you could bear with me. I think really I had 2 points really. One was as was mentioned about the temporary classroom block being located on the tennis courts, and of course it's in Greenbelt, and there was a date given 10th of December 21. I just wonder, does officers, do they really think that is enough time in case of, I don't know, slippages? What happens, for instance, if, God forbid, we have a second lockdown? One assumes you may be able to extend that in the case of an emergency. And my second point was really about energy efficiency, etc. I think Councillor Crystal's touched on it. I'm no expert on this at all. All I know is that I mean, we recently approved a school in my ward at the county, a new first school, and it's net zero carbon. It's the first one in the county. I just wonder, how does this one compare to that? You know, is this one net zero? I don't really know. I've been reading the. I can't get to where I was. Talking about the energy efficiency. There was some fantastic comments on here. I think it might have been 816. Bear with me. No, it wasn't.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do, Jeff. We'll ask David to comment on what you've said so far.
Okay, thank you.
If you can find your, your source material, then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
David Snell.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think the first point was, am I unmuted? Yes. The first point was about the length of construction. Of course, the condition has been agreed with the applicant, and that is the understanding of length of construction period. Obviously, yes, things can change, but if the construction period is extended, the applicants would need to apply for a variation of that condition. Councillor Jones is quite right on that point. I think the second point is about the energy efficiency of the building. If I can take you to paragraph 3.8.31 of the report. It confirms there that the construction and operation of the development would minimise overheating in summer and reduce the need for heating. Also reduce the need for heating. The policy encourages that. It does seek to encourage, in terms of a comparison with a zero carbon efficient building, no, it wouldn't compare favourably with a zero carbon efficient building. Most school buildings wouldn't. I mean, we are seeking, when we're doing our best, to encourage carbon efficiency, but it is not actually something that's insisted on by policy. It is encouraged, but we're doing our best. What I would say is that officers are aware of the criticisms that members have raised on previous school buildings recently, and I would say that whilst this building is not comparable to a zero carbon efficient building, it is pretty good in terms of what you've seen in relation to recent school buildings. Thank you.
Chairman. I think you're probably saying.
Well, I think the host has decided to mute me. He's obviously giving me a message of some sort. So Jeff, away you go, just to round that off.
Yeah. Thanks, David, for that response. So that clarifies a bit. The item I was referring to was 8.29, where talking about building design. Design in line with the ESOF, be lean, be clean, be green, energy hierarchy. Fabulous words. This approach means that the design achieves consistency, high energy efficiency in order to achieve low CO2 emission rates. So yeah, that's what I was referring to. And I just wonder, as usual with a school, they're long, flat, low buildings. They've got huge roofs. Have we got photovoltaics on this? I haven't seen it anywhere, so I'm guessing the answer is no. And is there a reason why not? Because these, those spaces are absolutely perfect for photovoltaics. Over to you, David.
Yeah, David Snell.
Thank you, Chairman. No, they in terms of the efficiency of the buildings, those methods, it applies to fabric first approach, which is our preferred approach, but there is no measures in terms of solar energy in addition to that.
Okay. I think you've answered the questions. I don't see any other hands. Yes, I do. Tony Stowe has his hand up. Where you go, Tony?
Thanks, Chairman. All it was really is that the concern that's been raised about the overlooking of this new building, under the condition 5, can we get enough in that to make sure they do put some higher landscaping that might block that view from School Lane? Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to see if there are any more hands because we're coming to the end of this debate. I think I've got, in this order, Councillor Crystal and then Councillor Andrews. So if you put your question in now, Ben, and then David, and then David Snell can pick everything up in one go.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm sorry to sound like a stuck record, David. I'm just concerned that we have plenty of statements saying that this is a green building, but there are no figures beyond the building emission rate and the target emission rate. We don't have any figures to provide a way of judging how energy efficient it is, and so I would think it's really important for us as a committee to be given that information about a building so that we can judge, relative to what's gone before. Otherwise, we really are just relying on words which could be completely accurate, or they may not be what we would judge as accurate. I think it's really important that we have those figures there. And also, I would just again urge, grey water. This is another site, PV. This is going to be built. This will be there for 40 years, and it could well be. It may not be meeting Part L in 2 years' time when the new regulations come in, which is clearly wrong. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Crystal. Then David Andrews, you get to close the show, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's more of a comment, Chairman, than a question, really. And whilst I support Jeff Jones' desire to maximise on renewables and various other facets that reduce our carbon footprint, my understanding is Leadenthorpe is an academy, and therefore it's out with the control of the majority of us in the local authority, and they do their own thing. But of course, we would want to encourage anything that produces a good return on green initiatives. Thank you.
Chairman.
Peter.
I believe we've lost one of the members at the minute. I think Councillor Page is offline currently. I don't think we've got him on here.
Okay. I think we can allow David Snell just to respond to those various comments. So some of those comments there were indeed comments, David, rather than questions. You don't necessarily need to respond to a comment, but...
I'm happy to, Chairman, thank you. In terms of Councillor Andrews' comment, yes, the school is an academy. Therefore, it isn't under the control of local authorities. In respect of Councillor Kemp's point about comparison figures, yes, I take the point. We haven't previously, and we haven't in this report, as you're probably aware, members, the figures can get quite technical, and they're often presented in different ways. Some applicants present them in very detailed modelling terms, while other applicants present them merely in terms of percentages. But happy to look at that, and we'll include as much information in future reports to enable you to have the comparisons. I think that was it, Chairman. In terms of
I think that's absolutely right, David Snell. Just looking in Peter Manning's direction, I can't see that Tim has come back to us.
I don't believe so, no. I mean, Will's looking out for him. I mean, one of us could call him if you want to pause for a minute. Or do you want to hang on for a minute? Or?
Yeah, I think if we can keep it to just a couple of minutes. Will you call him? Who will call him?
I can do that briefly if you don't mind. Hang on 1 second.
Yeah. Tony Snow's hand is up. I'll take your hand while we're at it, Tony. Yep.
All it was, I don't think David actually answered what I asked. I asked whether in the condition 5 we could get landscaping that would give some cover to the houses in School Lane. If you could answer that, would be great.
Correct. I don't think David did. Sorry, Tony.
I will do, Chairman. Yes, we can look at it, but bear in mind that there hasn't been significant objection on the application, and the building is 2 stories. So the amount of screening that you will be able to get in terms of that overall height would be difficult in terms of planting. It might well grow to that maturity, but not initially. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David Snell. Peter Mannings, how are we doing with Tim Page?
I've just spoken to him. It sounds like a connection problem could be pretty terminal as far as his attendance is concerned. He's going to keep trying.
Okay, we just have to hope that's just an IT terminal problem. All right, well, I think in those circumstances, we do move to a vote. So I'm looking for a proposer. Councillor Buckmaster is proposing, and a seconder, Jeff Jones, happy to second? Yep.
Yeah, happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Approval, that is.
Yep. We have a proposer and a seconder. Can I ask all those in favour to show your hands on the screen, please?
And keep them up.
Yeah,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
I'm choosing not to vote as chairman, so
unanimously. That's fine.
That gives you a full complement. I think just given that, looking in Victoria's direction, given that we have one member that's dropped off the radar, do I need to just go to the trouble of asking for votes against or abstentions? Because obviously the maths doesn't quite add up with when Tim's not with us.
I can't actually see Victoria, admit.
I can see Victoria.
Yeah, I am here. The vote was unanimous, so I think it's fine, Chair, to proceed on the basis that we're going ahead now.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Okay, so excellent, very well done, everybody. So in relation to application 320-0413 FUL, which is for the demolition of existing science building and the erection of a new 2-storey teaching block, use class D1, with associated landscaping and the installation of an additional block of interim temporary classrooms during construction, approximately 1,068 square metres GEA, alongside the retention of temporary units approved under planning consent 318-2098 FUL, all in relation to the 11th School, Sawbridgeworth. This application is granted. Thank you very much, everyone. Very good. That brings us on to item 5C. Peter, I'm just double checking with you that the public speaker for the last item has left us.
I believe he has, and I believe the next one's waiting.
I think he's gone, yeah, okay. So item 5C is application 318-2764 OUT. And this is an application for outline. It's an outline application for the erection of 14 residential units and 26 proposed car parking spaces, all matters reserved except access. And the location is Hertfordshire County Council Depot, Station Road, Watton at Stone. The case officer is Ailish Edmonds. And Ailish, I'd be very grateful if you would present this item for us, please.
Chair, I think Ailish is having some audio problems at the moment.
Oh, there's something happening. Ailish, I don't know if you heard me. I'm just inviting you to present your application item this evening, which is the Watton at Stone item. We're ready for you if you're ready for us.
Apologies, I was just having audio issues, but I'm back on now.
Very good. Okay, that's fine. Where you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So it's an outline application, as I'm assuming you've just announced, 14 residential properties and 26 proposed car parking spaces, and all matters are reserved apart from access. So if you want to go to the next slide, it will kind of give us an indication as to where the site is. So we're in Watton at Stone, a Category 1 village or Group 1 village, very close to the train station, as you can see. As I think we've previously discussed, it is an old Hertfordshire County Council site. It was used for the storage of maintenance vehicles and materials, as far as I'm aware. And I believe there was further use of the site for storage that they rented out at one point, but that is also seized. It's been vacant for some time. So as it is outlined with all matters reserved, the matters for consideration really are principle of development, and there is issues in terms of loss of employment, which I'll cover. Otherwise, it's access. There are other matters I have covered within the report, including matters relating to neighbour amenity, design, but as they're all indicative in terms of layout, which will be on the next slide, we've just very briefly covered those. So in terms of principal development itself, as I stated, it is in a Group 1 village. So obviously Watton at Stone is supposed to try and provide housing up to 2033 with 92 dwellings. So that will help with that provision. So from that stance, it is policy compliant. You're within the village boundary. Otherwise, as it is a sustainable brownfield site, from that perspective as well, in terms of policy DPS2, it's policy compliant in that regard as well. And then all other matters in Bill 1, we can't necessarily consider to the extent that we would as a full application, because it is outlined. All the design considerations in terms of the character of the village can't be considered here. If you want to move on to the next slide, it'll kind of give us an idea as to access. So I'll just touch on employment quickly first. So the applicant submitted a report as part of the application, which is a market report, assessing the fact that whilst there is a short supply of storage sites across Hertfordshire, this isn't a very well located site. The roads around aren't that great. And furthermore, if they were to use it for any other employment purpose, given the surrounding residential uses, there's not many uses that you could get on that site without having harm to those residents. Or if it was, for instance, an office style use, the amount of parking that would be required would result in a lot of traffic movements, which again may result in some harm. So I attributed a very limited weight to the loss of that employment in that regard. If I then move on to access, as that's the the matter that we can look at as part of this outline application beyond the other matters. Highways haven't objected. There are two accesses on this plan, as you can see. So the bottom access is the existing access off Station Road. They're looking to amend that, and that's for one residential dwelling, which again you'll see on the next slide momentarily. Whereas the other access is proposed, it's off Mead Close. Highways did have some issues in terms of internal layout and maybe radii that need to be considered, but the actual access itself off Station Road was deemed acceptable. There were no concerns raised there. So then go on to the next slide. Oh, was there not a layout slide? Apparently not. Okay, so there was an indicative layout that was provided as well, that kind of showed where the houses may be sited on the site. From a car park point of view, or a parking point of view, obviously we know that there is sufficient parking in terms of the amount of dwellings that are being supplied. So that was covered under my highways and parking area as well, or part of the report rather. Essentially they are proposing to provide 26 spaces, oh 34 spaces, sorry, which is well above what would be required given its situation and the 25% reduction that you can get for zone 4, but otherwise it is very sustainably located next to the train station and within a group 1 village. So the other matters which I'll touch on are design, but again, because it's indicative in terms of its layout, I had regard to density and the surrounding area and the fact that other developments in that locality are all cul-de-sacs. So in that regard, it is in keeping. Otherwise, the indicative layout did seem to say that the density would be, very similar to those other surrounding developments on the surrounding roads. And in terms of the landscaping, currently there is green boundaries off of Mead Close, and there's a little bit on Station Road as well. Much of that is to be retained in the indicative layout, but again, that can all be confirmed later on at reserve matters or full application stage, but that would be welcomed if that is the case. In terms of delivery of housing, they have advised that they can meet the 35%, but again, that would be dealt with at full application or reserve matter stage. But in that regard, it is policy compliant, having regard to the indicative layout as well in terms of the mix of housing. If that was to come forward, again, policy compliant. Neighbour amenity issues. Obviously, we have surrounding residential development. If you go back a slide, you'll be able to see that a little better, I believe. Yes, so we've got Hazeldale, Great Innings South, and that goes to Great Innings North, and then Mead Close itself. In terms of the indicative layout, which we haven't got, again, because it's outline, don't necessarily need to consider it at this stage, but I think there are sufficient distances and mitigation if necessary, although I don't think it probably would be necessary to ensure that all neighbours would have sufficient amenity levels in terms of loss of light, overbearing impacts, or any privacy issues. I think that should all be fine. I think number 17 is probably the closest relationship at Hazeldale, but even then there's probably sufficient room and that can be dealt with at full application stage. The other remaining matter that came forward was regards to surface water. So the LLFA provides some comments in regards to the private culvert that runs through the site. They had regard to significant blockages which were in this culvert. So there was ongoing discussions between the applicant, the LLFA, and both myself and a previous case officer who left the council in how that could be dealt with. They suggested a condition in terms of how it could be going to a specific manhole, and in terms of the runoff rates and the climate change, the LLFA came to a satisfactory conclusion with a condition that could be managed. So I think other than a few matters in terms of ecology, which again could be touched on at full application stage, or reserve matters, and environmental health in terms of any remediation that might be necessary. I think that covers everything pretty much that I've touched on in my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ailish. Thank you. Now we turn to speakers. For this application, we do not have a speaker for, but we do have a speaker against.
Yes.
And the speaker against is Mr. Peter Ackney. I hope I pronounced that properly. And
He is waiting, yes.
Peter or Will, I imagine you're going to let him into the meeting now.
Yeah, he's been waiting patiently for a while. Yes.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Ackney. It's very nice to see you there. Just to let you know, you are muted. I'm just about to explain the rules of engagement to you. So you will have 3 minutes to speak, and you will be timed. And if you are still speaking at the 3-minute point, the guillotine will come down. So you just need to do the best you can to speak make your points inside 3 minutes. But you will need to unmute, and then from the minute you start speaking, the clock will run. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I think we can, yeah. We can hear you. We're ready for you to speak, Mr. Ackney.
Oh, right, okay. Thank you very much. Good evening, Chair, Councillors and Officers. My name is Peter Ackney, and I wish to make a representation in relation to planning application 318-2764 OUT in Watnet Stone, my property 117 Hazeldale, which I have owned and occupied since it was built in 1971, shares a boundary with the proposed development in the council depot. I am also speaking on behalf of those living in 160 Hazeldale, which also shares a boundary with the depot. In general, we approve of the outline plan as shown on a leaflet distributed to us by the council in the last year to build 14 dwellings, access roads, car parking spaces in the depot. But we have 3 areas of concern. Number 1, we would like assurance that planning consent excludes all commercial activity and permits residential occupation only. We understand that at present, the site is designated for industrial use, so a permanent change of use would be required. Number 2, due to the natural contours of the area, the depot lies approximately 2 to 3 meters above the ground level of our properties in Hazeldale. If consent were given for 3-story buildings in the depot, they would present as 4-story buildings, overshadowing us for a large part of the day. This would seriously affect our quality of life. I've invested heavily in solar panels on the southwestern roof to provide renewable energy to my and neighboring properties. And these panels are in danger of becoming ineffective if the buildings in the depot are in close proximity and too high. This would cause a serious financial deficit and loss of sustainable energy. We request that if consent is granted, the height of buildings is limited to 2 stories maximum, with a shallow pitch roof design set back from our shared boundary as much as possible towards the west to grant us sunshine and light that we have naturally enjoyed for the past 49 years. Number 3, this is in relation to traffic and pedestrian safety in Station Road. The proposed may well be the tipping point for pedestrian safety in an already hazardous area. At present, there are 6 tributary roads feeding traffic into Station Road within a distance of no more than 1/4 mile. This stretch of Station Road has a very busy crossing point between the bulk of the village and Watton JMI School. There is a patrol for 2 periods each weekday, but no safe crossing for pedestrians, i.e. parents with young children,
I think, Mr. Ackner, your 3 minutes are up. That's correct, Peter? Yeah. Okay. So your picture is no longer on my screen, Mr. Ackner, but I'm sure you can hear me. So you hit the 3 minute mark, and as advised, we've stopped you at 3 minutes. But thank you very much for the points that you've made. Okay, so we've had officer presentation, we've had a speaker from the public. Now it's time for members. I've got Councillor Beckett, Councillor Kemp, and Councillor Stowe. In that order, please, gentlemen.
Thank you, Chair. Look, as it's a reserved matters, as it's an application where everything's reserved matters except for access, my concerns are around access off Morey Mead, is it close? That's a very narrow access point into the site there. And I'd just like assurance from the officer that the construction traffic will be purely fed off Station Road for the site, because I don't see how you'll get any turning circle safely, especially with residents parking down there. Morey Mead, I remembered it now. It looks very tight. So in granting the application, I'd like us to see that all construction traffic is fed off Station Road and only post-development access is granted from Morey Mead.
Thank you, Councillor Beckett. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. Firstly, I think the resident has a very reasonable point about particularly high buildings, and maybe something could be considered in terms of restriction, at least on the east side immediately adjacent to him. I'm not sure if that's something that's appropriate to build into the outline planning application, so perhaps the officer could mention that. The other point I'd like to make, however, is in terms of looking for opportunities, broader opportunities when we're considering this point. It's been pointed out rightly that this is a sustainable site in terms of transport because it's very close to the railway station, and concern has also been expressed that people might tend to park in the road as a result. So there is an incentive there for the railway station to have better car parking facilities provided if possible. But also, Watton-at-Stone at the moment is a village where the footpath and cycling facilities don't seem to be particularly well connected. And if people want to get to the railway station, they have to walk, they appear to have to walk around in circles as far as I can tell. And mention has already been given to the relatively narrow pavements on Station Road. This site actually seems to present an opportunity in that it would be possible to put footpaths through from Great Innings North and Hazeldale, which would actually shorten the routes for many residents to get to the station or provide alternative walking routes through the village, and would therefore encourage green, sustainable transport, walking and cycling. So I wonder if anything can be done as the outline planning permission is developed to encourage that these be taken into consideration and should be gone for if possible.
Thank you very much, Ian. Now, Tony Stowe, and then we'll go back to the officer before we take another round of questions.
Mine is a very short point I'd like clarification on, because this Morey Mead close, is that an adopted road? Because when I was down there, the houses there are quite new. I know the policy of non-adoption of these roads has been going on for some while. And if it's not an adopted road, is the access able to go ahead? If you could answer that, I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Ailish, if you could respond, please.
Absolutely. So I'll go through each point as I go along. So in terms of narrow access on Station Road over construction. So one of the conditions proposed as part of Highways recommendations was for a construction traffic management plan. Obviously, we take the lead on Highways expertise in terms of the acceptability of where construction vehicles may go if they consider that the best opportunity is off Station Road. Obviously, that's the expertise we'll go with. Obviously, I can discuss that with Highways and with the applicant and see if that probably is the best route, but considering that's probably the existing access as opposed to the new access, it's quite likely that that will be the case in any case in order to provide the new access. So then on to high buildings, and referring also to the objections raised. At this stage, because it is only an outline application, sorry, David. Because it is only outline at this moment, it is something we'd be looking at a reserve matters or a full application stage. We'd assess immunity at that stage to see if it was acceptable in terms of the immunities of all surrounding properties. It might be that it's a condition of land levels to make sure that, you know, it is appropriate in terms of where the buildings are built in relation to surrounding properties, but also in terms of the height of those properties as well. In terms of footpaths from surrounding roads, I take that on board. It is something that could be picked up again, perhaps at full or reserve matter stage. It seems like a good design opportunity to make those sustainable transport methods as you suggested. And otherwise, in terms of Morley Highways advised that it was an unclassified road, so I'd assume it's not adopted, but I'm not 100% sure of that, and I can double check on that. I think that's all of the questions.
Fine, Ailish. Yes, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The fact the road is unclassified doesn't reflect its status as to whether it's adopted or not. The flats down at the end of the road, further down, have been there a considerable time, so I would suspect that it is adopted. And there are actually footways through from the several residential streets behind this development, which will take you to the railway station, albeit a slightly devious route, but it is possible.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Did David Snell? Yes, you do, David. Yes, please do.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to come back on further advice about height of buildings, and to be a bit more firm, actually. At this stage, because it's an outline planning application, you should not consider the impact in terms of the height of buildings on adjoining properties. That would be considered either if a reserve matters application is put in, which could be refused for that reason, or if a full application is put in, but not at the outline stage, because we're not considering that matter. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David, very much. Okay, we've had a good chat. There are no more hands. Jeff Jones's hand is waving at me. It's very nice of you to wave at me, Jeff. Where you go?
No, all I was going to say in response to David saying that there was no layout for two stories of section, but in the illustrative layout, it's very clear in there. You've got 2-story, 1.5, and single story. So one assumes this is all part of the this application. It's in the illustrative layout, so I don't quite understand that. It mentions 2-story there.
Okay. I'm going to take Councillor Beckett and then go back to David Snell or Ailish as appropriate.
Thanks, Chair. I know the site a little bit, having walked the streets over there on a political, not a financial matter. The buildings that are on there are certainly old enough, I would imagine, to be riddled with asbestos, not mentioned in the application as I saw it. I just want just to raise that. I mean, I know it would already be raised and be decontaminated anyway, but just wanted to really raise it here as well, please.
Okay. Again, I think we're coming to the end of this conversation. David Snell, where you go?
Just to say, Chairman, that in response to Councillor Jones's point, the illustrative layout is illustrative. You're not considering it. It is not part of the application.
Thank you. Thank you. Ailish, you don't need to comment further, but just giving you an opportunity. If you have nothing further to add, that's fine.
Just on the asbestos, there is a contamination condition suggested from environmental health, so that would somewhat cover that, but it is covered in any case.
Thank you very much. Okay, another very good discussion. I'm looking for a proposer and a seconder. Councillor Beckett's proposing and Councillor Buckmaster is seconding, in which case can we then move to a vote? All those in favour of this application, please show your hands.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Chairman.
Very, very good. And just for the sake of the record, we're only giving you one vote there, Councillor Andrews.
I'm just following your instructions to the letter.
Indeed.
Show
No,
your hands.
Yeah,
so I showed them. I've got two.
Yes, indeed. No, I need to be more careful. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. So in relation to application number 318-2764 OUT, which is an outline application for the erection of 14 residential units and 26 proposed car parking spaces, all matters reserved except access. This is at Watton at Stone. We have just agreed to grant that application. Thank you very much. Now, this moves us on to our last item, and I'm just going to remind members, I don't think we'll need this, but if we do find that we're going to run beyond 10 p.m, we do need to take a vote to agree that we do collectively go beyond 10 p.m. It's about 20 to 10 now, so I suspect we won't need that, but it's just a reminder. So, item 5D, is an officer, which officer is presenting this item? David Snell, thank you very much, David. Sorry, I haven't introduced the item, I beg your pardon. This is application 320-1075HH. It's for the insertion of window to flank elevation at 8 Cresset Close, Stansted Abbot Ware. This application is before us because it relates to a member of East Herts District Council. David, if you'd like to present, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to say a great deal. Everything is covered in the report. You'll see that the application is for the insertion of a window in the flank elevation. So it is a very minor alteration, even in terms of a householder application. The design is considered it to be acceptable. You'll note that there are no neighbour representations, and in terms of neighbour impact, the window will be obscure glazed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, David. As David says, this does seem to be relatively minor and straightforward application. Nevertheless, if anyone does have a comment, now is the time. I don't see any hands, in which case I'm looking for a proposer and a seconder. Going to just move it around a bit. So we'll let Councillor Carolyn Redfern propose. And Rishi, did I see your hand up there?
Yeah, that's fine.
You'll be the seconder. So we have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour, please show your hands and hold them on the screen.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 10 hands, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. In that case, in relation to application 320-1075HH, which is for the insertion of window to flank elevation at 8 Cresset Close, Stansted Abbots Ware, we have just granted that application. Thank you very much indeed. We now come back to the agenda.
Page 127 onwards.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Yes, I was about to say that. We come back to the agenda. It's item 6. Items for reporting and noting, that commences at page 127, runs through to page 140. As the agenda item says, this is simply for reporting and noting. I can never remember whether we need to take any form of vote on this or we just nod.
Chairman, there's no need for a formal vote as such, no, unless any members have any comments they want to make on any of it.
Yeah, fine. Councillor Jones.
No, just a simple comment, Chairman. I mean, interesting to see that the two that have gone to appeal have both been allowed, which is going to go against the officer's decision. And they're quite simple ones as well. One was a loft conversion, the other one direction of a front entrance door canopy roof. Just yeah, interesting to note.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. You're right to note that. That's fair comment. All right. Now that moves us on to item 7, which is urgent business. I don't believe we have any urgent business, but I think Sarah Saunders, our head of planning, would just like to update the committee on something that she's been involved in recently.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't keep you very long, but I did just want to share information with you about virtual planning committees, because as you know, as officers, we keep an eye on what other authorities do, and we share practice between each other as well. So last week I attended a couple of sessions with other authorities from the South East of England and London, and as part of those sessions we did share experience about virtual planning committees and how they are working in practice. And I just really wanted to kind of put a marker down. I'm not going to go into any detail at all, but from the experience that was shared across the board, virtual planning committees so far are working really well for a number of authorities, and I think that's quite an important marker just to put down. And actually, in terms of our approach, I think the approach we have taken to preparing and conducting kind of our development management committee is really sound, and it's been successful to date. And I think that's quite important to share, because I think the steps we've taken is very much in line with others, and in some cases, you know, we do things differently for the right reason and are slightly ahead as well. So I don't want to go into any great detail, but I think it's quite important to share with you as a committee the experience from other authorities, but also just to put a marker down about our own approach. And that's meant that, you know, this is I think our fourth virtual planning committee. There've been a number of items tonight, and that's mean that we, you know, as a committee and a council, we've been able to keep things moving and manage to continue to conduct business as well. So yeah, I don't want to say anything more than that. I think it's just for noting, but I think it's just helpful to know what others are doing, and that our approach has been sound to date. Excellent.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's good to know, and obviously it's good that you take the trouble to find out what the other authorities are doing. Okay, well, we've reached the end of the meeting. This has been a slightly long meeting. I'd like to thank everybody for questions and your patience. And at 9:48, I'm calling the meeting to a close. Thank you all very much indeed.